Thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
We're waiting here till 5 after. If you want to jump on the Zoom, let us know. If you want to hang out in the internet, that's fine. Um, Yusuf, can you see if the LinkedIn's up? Because the LinkedIn is what's really growing our group.
LinkedIn.
Did you guys know that we've grown 10% last month?
Woo!
Yeah, 10%.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
awesome.
unfortunately, the more layoffs there are, the more we grow. So, I like the fact we're growing. I don't like the reason I think we're growing. So, speaking of that, that's a perfect segue to our pitch next week. If anyone's watching,
Yep, we're there.
What's
LinkedIn's
next? What's next week, Yusuf?
Career fair.
Career fair. And how much does it cost you as a candidate?
75 story points.
70. So free. And Scott, how much does it cost for an employer?
Also 75.
I think it's 75 story points.
Exactly. Or
Employers as well.
4
Yeah,
T-shirt size stories, or free.
hmm
But you all should sign up on our website and come and participate. This year we're gonna A/B test things. I think Garrison will talk about that tonight, or something like that. Is we believe this is going to be the format. Yusuf is going to be our friendly elevator operator, and employers are going to be invited on for 180 seconds of pitch time. At 180 seconds, Yusuf will open the doors and push them out. If you would like to meet up with those future employers, then you hop into the lobby and talk to them afterwards, exchange information, and do whatever you do off of Canton Coder property, because we don't endorse anyone. Do your own due diligence. What do you guys think? It's kind of cheesy, but kind of funny.
I didn't know we had property.
Oh, it's a Canton Coder Tower in downtown Canton. Have you not seen it?
180 stories.
180 stories, takes 1 second per story to go up.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also stories, not t-shirt sizes.
we actually have 4 people live on LinkedIn, and
4 people.
We'll give them about 2 more minutes. Any other banter we want to make? Any jokes we have?
It's probably as good a time as any to say hello world.
Hello. Oh, I like it. But
Oh,
what
yeah,
language
that's a good
did you
one.
use to say hello?
Dun dun dun.
Well, that was English.
Yeah.
Hallo Welt.
Did you hear what the interpreter
German.
said at runtime? It's a trap.
At runtime.
Scott gets that joke. Yusuf's just laughing.
I don't get it actually. It's spread over my head.
It's assembly joke.
I'm social laughing.
What did
I'm
it?
social laughing.
Nobody gets it, man. It's okay.
Wait, then we'll do one more dad joke here. We got there's
Some people are funny, some people aren't.
well, there are 2 types of people: people that understand binary and people that understand binary. Oh, did you hear about the 2 types of developers that came out on the recent survey we ran? There are people that understand time zones, and then there's people that are late. Garrison, this is when you're supposed to socially laugh to make me feel good about myself.
I held it back that
That
time.
was the power of the pause,
Wanted
right?
to-
The fact that
wanted to see
somebody
you
left
suffer,
while you were
I
telling
think.
that joke should tell you something.
All right. Let's get started here. The jokes aren't getting better. So I see we actually have people on the internet. So if you feel like you want to jump in our Slack, join slack.cantoncoders.org. If you want to join our Zoom, the link is on LinkedIn somewhere. Yusuf will post it somewhere that on this live stream, and the link is also in Slack. So Canton Coders is a nonprofit. We are based out of Canton Anywhere, because there is a Canton everywhere. And we started in Canton, Michigan, but now we're a nonprofit online. Our goal is to make people happy with code. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we surmise that there's a lot of software developers that would be excellent at product, and there's also a lot of product people that just like to talk about product. So we're going to try something tonight. We're going to have Garrison, our resident senior chief product manager. What's your title?
Helping people.
And he only represents himself tonight, but he's going to do a little thing about product management, and then maybe we'll have a little discussion. We didn't know how many people were going to come, but we're going to A/B test this and let us know if this is helpful to you. So, Garrison, what do we got tonight? What are you going to teach the 3 of us and everyone on the internet tonight?
Yeah, great that you asked. So first, Canton Coders, Joel, thank you so much for having me tonight. Really excited to be here with you today and have a conversation around product thinking for developers, and just diving into that a little bit. When you think of product and you think of, thinking, everything that we do every day is a decision. And when you think of being a product manager and evaluating trade-offs and prioritizing, that's just what part of product thinking is about. We'll go into that piece. We'll also go into that Spidey sense piece where we talk a little bit about product sense. And why this matters is something we'll dive into as well, right? Like, okay, cool, this is awesome, right? More information, but why is it important for you and how can you use it? And then finally, you'll leave with 5 actionable insights that you can use coming out of this conversation so that you can start to have or build upon the product mindset that you might already have today. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'd like to go ahead and start off with a question, and I'm just curious to hear from you. What does product thinking mean to you? Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to take yourself off mute, but I'd love to hear from you. Could you tell me a little bit more about what it means to you?
I will let other people talk first.
That's a first in his life.
I think more about like achieving outcomes versus worrying about output and things like that, right? Outcomes that matter to our end customers.
I think it's about creating a customer experience that someone will trade you value for.
Right. A customer experience that someone will trade you value for. Thinking about outcomes instead of output. Both of those are right on point. Thank you for sharing that. What else? What other thoughts might we have?
One of the things, Garrison, I know that will be asked by some of our newer developers that are on the call, and it's okay. We like to field some of the questions, that people, don't feel comfortable asking is, product thinking is what I'm not allowed to do because I'm a software developer. It's a thing I don't know how to do.
Yeah. And, that's such an important point and the reason that it's important is because it impacts so many of us, so many developers when you're on your team. And if that's important to you, I want you to hold that thought. We're going to go ahead and talk about what product thinking isn't in just a second. And so before we dive into today's course, like, who the heck am I? Why the heck do you want to listen to me and all this stuff that I'm talking about right now, right? And so about me, just a little bit more. I work for a major automotive company as a senior product manager. I have about 10 years of experience in fintech, 7 in software, and 5 years in coaching. I really like to build things. I have a curiosity for learning and understanding. I see myself as an experimenter and tinker who is a big fan of bringing out the best in the people and the teams that I work with. I have a beautiful wife who is a teacher for the blind, and I enjoy snowboarding, mentoring aspiring product managers, and traveling. If you like tacos, you're my new best friend. I love tacos. Talk to me a little bit more about your favorite kind of taco. Other than that, that's about me. And I'm going to go ahead and start telling you a little bit more about what product thinking is.
Hey, Garrison, how do you want to field questions because we do have more people now in Zoom?
Yeah, that's awesome. You know what? As they come in, I'll go ahead and take a pause every 90 seconds to 120 seconds, every 1 to 2 minutes. I'll go ahead and take a pause and folks can go ahead and ask questions, and then we'll go ahead and keep going. How does that sound?
Sounds great, Garrison.
Awesome. So when we think of product thinking, first and foremost, Joel and I think that was Scott, you guys both hit the nail on the head on what it is. Outcomes over output, and thinking about the user experience and how you can trade that for value. And at the core of product thinking, it is solving problems that matter to the users of our products, right? When we think of a product, we think of something that's solving a problem for our users. And when we think of an organization, for those of us that are on product teams here, companies apply product thinking to essentially their whole organization. And the organizations that do that are typically referred to as product-led companies. We're not going to mention those type of companies, but the first few that come to your mind are probably those product-led companies. when companies are product led, what this really means is the teams are in service of the product. They're grouped by product. They're grouped by product lines. They're grouped by product strategy. And what this means is product success is the focal point. So why does this matter? What does this mean? And so when we think of product, when we think of developing code and building things, a lot of times when we're on the product team, we might think about how we might make our product better, in the mindset of how might we make this a different color, or how might we refactor the code? How might we increase or decrease our response time that it takes for a customer to receive a response from us? How might we make these enhancements within our process? How might we develop this product in a way that is a higher quality product? And that's a great thing to do, right? When we think of code quality. However, one of the challenges that I've faced in my experience is that we often have trade-offs. There's resource constraints. We only have X amount of developers on a team. And so how do we fit in migrations, infrastructure changes? How do we fit that in with product-led initiatives such as increasing conversion rate? Or perhaps we want to provide a service that is a self-service for a customer so that they don't have to call in to get information. Or maybe we're focused on an application and we want to reduce the drop-off rate.
Mhm.
And so what that means is, don't build better cameras, build better photographers, right? Apple doesn't just sell computers, they sell tools to unleash the human potential. And so this focal point is not solely led by product managers, but it's also important for designers, engineers, and product leaders. And how does this play out, right? It doesn't matter who we are. When we start to think about product thinking and the things that we do today, and you probably find yourself doing this on your team, is what problems do we need to solve for users? And I'm going to pause right here and give a chance to folks to go ahead and ask questions. That is the very first thing that we want to ask ourselves, is what problems do we need to solve for our users? And so with that, what thoughts or questions does the group have so far?
I know one of the favorite questions I've always asked learning is, hey, I have a Java library that has a security vulnerability. Can you tell me how to talk product? Because that's a serious concern for our users, but I don't know how to communicate that effectively to the product manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Good scenario case study type question that really allows us to dig into an actionable example versus theory. And so let's say you have a vulnerability in Java, right? How we might think about that is, what is the issue and what is the impact, right? So we understand that there's an issue and there's a vulnerability. Well, how many folks can this impact? What is the user base? Is it 50 customers? Is it 5,000? Is it a segment of customers, right? We need to better, in order for us to have these conversations, in order for us to better understand the way that the product manager is thinking when it comes to priority and working on what's next, is that's the way they're thinking. And so they're going to ask you, how many users is this impacting? What is the overall risk of this? And in that case, you may not know the answer to that as a software developer. If you're more seasoned, you may be able to run with it. Now, if you're someone who's junior or in a new organization, you may ask for a cybersecurity advocate to help. At the end of the day, though, the product manager is going to have to make a prioritization decision. It's a lot easier when you go to the product manager with the title, the issue, the impact, and solutions that you recommend. What your recommendation is for solutions, what options, if you will. And so that's the kind of thing that we have to go back to our product. We want to go back to our product manager with, because, for example, if we're launching something else that is driving an OKR, Let's say that we want to increase our NPS score. Maybe that's our North Star metric is NPS.
Mhm.
Then if we have another initiative taking place, how does that impact that initiative and the timeline for that initiative? And so those are the types of decisions that the product owner, product manager has to make. And as a developer, if you go to the product manager with this structured thinking, it allows you to get to the root cause and to the solution a lot faster and in a lot more concise, in a more concise manner.
Cool. Do you want other examples like that? Because I know Yusuf's got some others on the Zoom might, but I know we're kind of just riffing because you're amazing at this. But do you want more examples like that, or?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from folks in the room. And, when we think of, there's just a lot of words there, right? And so,
OKR, initiative.
yeah,
You use a lot of words there, a lot of software developers, and we're talking to a real product manager, so we're going to ask you to step into developer world and
absolutely.
start. What you said was, I have a vulnerability in my library, and I need to communicate in OKR and some other fancy words. Can you break that down into some more simple? We would be happy to use the words like polymorphism and an instantiation in front of you, product manager, but we'd like to speak more plain, simple language. Is there a way to say that in a simpler language?
Yeah, absolutely. Diving on over to your land of
Not
developers.
our land. Let's just meet in the middle at like a grocery store. How would we communicate this at a grocery store?
Normal
Sure.
English.
Sure. And so what this looks like from a normal English perspective is prioritizing what is what is our product strategy?
Mm-hmm.
How have we defined success as an organization? And is the thing that we're doing going towards those goals? So let's think of an objective from a development standpoint. Let's say today you're releasing code to production once every 3 days. An OKR might be around increasing the software that we release to our customers. And one of the key results might be around that is increasing the amount of code that we release to production from once every 3 days to once every day. So as an OKR, that we have OKRs like that for the business. When you think of a product such as Airbnb, Netflix, Google, any of these products that exist today or communities, it's a problem that it solves for a customer. And so our objectives are going to go back to solving them problems for those customers.
And so what you're saying is solving problems for the customer in a measurable way. Somehow measurable. OKR or something else.
You got
Is that
it.
the simplest way to say it?
You got it. Absolutely. So to your point, when we think about that, we come up with a goal. So we'll start that with what is the problem that it solves, right? Mm-hmm. What problem does it solve, and who does it solve it for? Mm-hmm. Does it solve it for this set of users, or does it solve it for that set of users? And then we go ahead and say, okay, well, based on that, and based on where our product is in its life cycle, is this a new product? Is this something that we're just launching, like a new feature? Mm-hmm. Or is this something that is existing where we're just enhancing in one way or another? Or is this something completely different, such as technical debt, support, or maybe you work on a team that's a more technical team that builds APIs, for example. We can apply that to this too. But for this scenario, we're focused on more product thinking, product-based solutions. Mm-hmm. And so back to your point, back to who the user is, that's when we want to think about what goal we're solving. Is this task success? Are we focused on making this easier for our customer? Are we focused on what is the problem that we're focused on, that we're trying to solve? What are the pain points for that user?
So are you talking the same point yet? Still, I have something to share as well.
Sure, absolutely.
So of course, I am developing the different type of tools and technology. So one of the example, we have developed our mobile app, and we are using the third party library for the mention. Okay, in the chat, you know that we have to mention everybody. This is not what we built. This is we just found somebody's library. So of course, echoing with Garrison, it has impact. It is, we have to use it. It is not friendly, but we have to use it until we actually like the make our own custom like the mention library. So regardless of, there will be effect. We have to measure the effect, and until you have to make the decision whether you want it or you do not want it. Like in my case, I need it because this the mention, the functionality, it is important. It is not I built it, but I need it. So that's the like the, the scenario will be exist for almost every cases, like how much impact it is happening, but there will be some impact.
Very good point. And so what do we do then? What do we do then? Everything has an impact. How do we prioritize and how do we make trade-offs? And so what that looks like for us is we would want to look at what is, for example, when we have multiple things, we want to identify each one of those as an individual is what is the impact and the motivation behind each one of these things, and how does it tie back up to our North Star goal, our North Star metric as an organization. So back to your point, Shiblu, you probably have a product strategy, right? Like where you're playing, who your users are, what problem you're solving for them, and also a metric that you're looking at, whether that's engagement, monetization, adoption, retention, one of those core metrics. And so when you think about these goals that we have, are not goals, but when we think about these initiatives that we have, what is the impact of this initiative and how does it impact that overall metric? Or how could it negatively impact that metric if you don't do it, right? And so when we think of
right.
that roadmap of the now, near, and far, what do you have to do now to get you where do you want to go? Right. And so what are the things that perhaps if you break this down smaller, for example, think of mainframe and breaking it down into microservices. If you broke this problem, is there a way for you to break it down smaller where you can start some of the things now and then do the heavy overload? And so again, when you think of that trade-off though, we might want to think about what is our North Star metric and what one is going to have a larger impact on that. That is the one that we might prioritize to work on first.
Is this why maybe the fictitious team I work on still operates on Fortran COBOL mainframe? Because there isn't a better, it doesn't make sense to switch off and make that investment? Is that what my product manager is telling me?
What there's a lot of organizations that still use mainframe and they use it for a reason because it's reliable, it gets the job done. And in some instances, this is true. What's the point of reinventing the wheel? And there hasn't been something that's came out that is better. I would love to hear more from you guys because you're the technical experts.
And
so
the business, look, business know one thing. If something is working, let it go. Because the investment involved, in fact, the time involved, and then the risk involved. If I start breaking the mainframe, if it does not work, my time will be wasted, my money will be wasted. So that's the reason the mainframe or all the old system, I think this will exist for a long time. I saw so many companies, they tried, they stopped. They tried, they stopped because they have the different priority. Hey, it is working, move on. Let's do something different. That's exactly the observation.
Absolutely. That is such a valid point. And that is product thinking in itself, is realizing what is the risk reward play for this? How is this going to impact our users? How is this going to help solve the user problem? And I'm waiting to hear that, right? Like that as a product manager or as a chief product manager, you're thinking about, because we only have so many people, resources, and time. And so given that, we have to prioritize what we work on and what's going to solve the problem for the customer.
So I'm Yusuf, new developer, right? And this is a segue question here, so it's a really softball. Feel like you can hit this one out of the park. I'm Yusuf, new developer, and my team wants to adopt Angular software development. Okay. And our manager says there isn't a budget to get us professional training. Like Scott, the Angular expert, we can't afford him to come in and teach us. He costs too much a day. Scott costs us $5 a day to come in and teach us how to do Angular development the right way. Right? Setting the stage here. The basic question I have is, if I'm a new developer, right, I can go off and Google how to do Angular development. Or I can invest in someone like Scott Shepard to come in and teach me how to do it the right way the first time versus doing it the wrong way the first 3 times. How would I ask my product manager to go unlock funding to get me trained?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like that's a question that we think about. How might we be more influential, because we know the value in something. The challenge becomes now, how do we communicate that to our audience in a way that is impactful and that they can understand the same value that we see in something, such as an Angular certification. And so if you're a developer,
Mhm.
and you're thinking like a product manager, you're gonna think of shiny objects. Whether you have a kid or you've bought something, a shiny object yourself in the past.
Mhm.
Um, you're going to think of that. So as a developer, what that means for you is you're going to want to go to the product manager and say, hey, or you're going to want to communicate with your product manager and say, this is the new thing we're trying to build. And based on the new thing we're trying to build, this programming language is the best, or this programming language is going to be the most effective for what we're trying to build. And here's why. And have 4 reasons why, strong reasons why it is. And then also say, hey, this is the training we need, and here's what we need and why we need it. That's going to be very effective in having that conversation with your product manager, because your product manager is going to have to go have a conversation with somebody else as well. And when we're building influence without authority, we want to use data. So any sort of data that you have when you're having that conversation with your product manager is going to help you be more effective and more influential in that conversation. So I would say a couple tips here.
Mhm.
Bring the data, understand what the problem is that you're solving, why it's important to have this versus what you have today, and how it's going to be beneficial. What's the benefit statement?
Is
Yep.
there
So with Garrison, I want to add a couple things. So
Sure.
first of all, we have to the Angular JS. The time I hired someone, a developer, 2 things I need to remember. What is my current environment is? Of course, I need the JavaScript. So of course, I'm not going to hire somebody who knows Python or somebody knows the Java. So first of all, it goes to the manager who is hiring this person.
Mhm.
If someone knows the React, of course, he's aligned with the JavaScript. At this moment, I think that what you said, that I bring someone to show him the best practice of how to use the Angular in general, because these guys already know JavaScript because he's the JavaScript developer. So instead of asking the product manager, I think this is more about the how this person get hired, and the manager makes the better decision, because the product manager, he wants somebody just become productive, become successful to get out the product on live.
Mhm.
That's my takeaway.
That's interesting, and thank you for taking the time to hear to share your thoughts on that. And it certainly depends on who the product manager is. I know for me personally, I'm certainly invested in the growth of my development team and the developers, and take pride in helping develop them. And so the conversation for me is going to be more personalized and better understanding
True.
the reason why they want to go with this, and how can I provide the best experience to them, but also be the most effective with their time and scale it if there's an opportunity.
So Garrison,
Absolutely.
from a product management question, so I'm going to pick on Scott and Yusuf because they signed a waiver. So if our software architecture is React, and Yusuf walks in knowing Angular, and Scott knows React, and they interview just the same, who would you select? Because trying to give a vision to people and why they may not be select for jobs. Nothing about them, but who would you select if you needed to build in React? Scott knew React, and Yusuf knew Angular.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta look at looks first, I think.
I'd love to answer that, so I'll answer it for you. I'm not going to be the person that I'm not going to choose a candidate based on just that. There's so much more that goes into how a candidate is chosen, such as how they're going to fit in with the team, what their overall skills are, and so I think there's a lot more there. And I would also, especially if it's a software developer, I'm certainly not a development expert, so I would rely on my team, my development team, to be there to help me make that decision.
We'll choose the React developer in the end.
All things the same, it's okay.
All things the same, right?
Yeah.
Why would you hire somebody who doesn't have, who needs to learn it? If you can't find anybody who's a React developer, right? Then yeah, take the Angular person and they'll probably learn it in a matter of weeks.
Doesn't it come down to the economics though, Garrison? If you had to make the decision, if we pressed you on this, Scott and Yusuf are fair to pick on. Scott knows React. Yusuf knows Angular. They have the same qualifications, the same exact answers. Right? And you didn't know Yusuf in a previous life, so there's no bias. What would be the business decision? What's the cold, hard business decision? Because we want to deal with reality, not speculative. We're working with developers and we just want to be honest.
Yeah, and that's the thing about hiring and about people and decisions is there's no black and white to that. It's a scenario. It goes by scenario, each scenario. And so given that,
look at that deflection.
Scott,
Scott,
you won't answer this. He won't. He just doesn't want to say the React, dude.
I kind of lean toward somebody who can kind of bridge gaps as well and become at least fluent in the problem domain. So I think that's where we as developers could probably do better, is get out of the mindset of the technology and the shiny objects buried underneath, and think in terms of how can I, like, if I want this shiny object, I want to learn something new and bring it into my product. How can I justify that in the problem domain? Like, what additional problem can I solve for a user, or how can I enhance the problems we are solving for a user and take that in as data that can help justify the move to something else.
And Scott, you have just defined the thesis why Garrison and I are testing this whole theory about teaching software developers product.
All right, I'll look for. I can't.
No, that's a great statement. You kind of full circled and validated our hypothesis, right, Garrison?
Yeah, Scott, that's such a great point, and I'm happy you took the time to share it with us, because that's what it is exactly. As we think about product, is we think about the opportunity and what the impact is going to be on that. And so, for example, if we're going to learn a new language and it's going to allow us to go to market 25% faster, and you can pitch that, then if we spend a month learning this language or 8 weeks, but yet we can go 30% faster, then it's probably worth it. And so that's the kind of way that we're looking at making decisions from a product thinking standpoint, is what's that measurable impact. And as we start to think about experimentation, that is where we start to think about, like, okay, back to this Angular example, what is my hypothesis? And this is my hypothesis, and these are the metrics that I'm hoping to move. And these are my counter metrics, which are going into, okay, if these are basically the things that say it's a kill if these other metrics are affected. And so we can think about that even with process on our team, as we try to influence our product managers into what to prioritize. Does that make sense, or was that kind of a lot of rambling?
To me, it makes sense, but I think it's because we talked offline.
So one thing happened. So the question is who we are going to hire, the React or the Angular JS.
Mm-hmm.
So if our current code base is React, and it is a very large code base, and we need someone, they need to work day-to-day basis to continue support our front end. And fortunately, I think I have to pick the React guy. Again, as Garrison has mentioned many good things that we have to consider his communication, is he culturally fit in the company, and then that guy is, and how the Angular guys, did he do any the trial, the React project? I will be thinking all of this. If I see the match, then maybe I will pick the Angular guy. But again, he said very right. We will look so many the key point before we make the decision. But the technically, the React guy will be the right fit because he has the knowledge and he can come to the code base and he can figure things out and be productive.
Yeah, and and to your point, one of the things that you're going to keep my ear low to the ground is when we get to the end of that interview and there's an opportunity for them to ask questions. What types of questions are those developers asking?
Yep.
Are they asking questions that are thought provoking and that are geared towards the team responsibility or product that they might be working on, or are they more generic type questions? And that's going to
Yep.
show me if the passion and curiosity is really there.
Correct. You are right. Absolutely. And in this case, I'm expecting from the Angular guy, hey, you guys know that my resume said I'm very good at JavaScript and I'm not good fit, to be honest. How you guys will welcome me? So those questions show me, oh wow, this guy already knows right away his weak point, and he's asking me, uh, are you going to welcoming him? So he's right. His questions will help me at the how much we are engaging after the interview.
Right. And that's so on point as a product manager is. And so when we think about asking questions, that is our strength as a product manager. And it should be yours as a software developer, because product managers we're in the game of assumptions, of validating assumptions, of making assumptions and questioning them and validating them. Everything is an assumption. And we want to better understand what those assumptions are before we spend time and effort and energy in pursuing something.
Well, Garrison, I know you have an agenda tonight, and I want to give you space to go slide back in it. We derailed you, like good developers we are.
Oh, we're doing great. We're perfectly on schedule at this point. But I'm going to warn you, once we pass this slide, it says danger, wrong way, turn
Are you
back.
trying to share slides? Because we haven't seen slides. We've thought you've just been speaking from memory, and we're quite impressed.
No, he will be sharing the slide. This
Oh
is
my
the,
goodness.
Well, Garrison, in the background, Yusuf said, "Is he on slides?" And I think he's just going from memory. He's pretty good, isn't he?
Well, so it looks like the slides are disabled.
Can you go ahead and activate that, Yusuf?
the share is disabled or the slide?
Yeah. So this is our
Sharing's disabled.
By the way,
I don't think I can do that, man. I don't have
I'm
that.
your co-host. Anyhow, this is our first product for Dev Night. Of course, we're gonna learn because we're gonna make lots of mistakes live. With
Yeah. And while we're doing that, I can go ahead and keep going. It certainly doesn't have to stop us.
I mean, you can talk with your hands. That's just as good as slides.
Sure. So yeah, right. Like here we go, mime time talking, right? So we talked a little bit about what product is. We dived into some examples. We dived into an interviewing study of how might we hire somebody based on the way thinking about product thinking. Let's spend a moment and just align on what product isn't. And I think this was mentioned at the beginning of our session today about product being all about the product manager and that all decisions lie with product.
Mm-hmm.
This could not be further from the truth. Hearing rumors that product is more important than other practices such as engineering, sales, or design. Here's the thing. Product thinking is not about hierarchy or power line with the product team. Really what it is at the end of the day, it's about a business creating value through its products. And that's what a product team is a business creating value through its products. And the thing is successful product-led businesses do not rest the business's entire success on product management. And that's why software craftsmanship is so important, the quality that we put into our product.
You can share, by the way, if you not want now.
Oh my goodness, you are the best.
I was trying not to interrupt you.
Now the illusion is gone that Garrison is just ripping perfectly in time.
Yeah, and so thinking about what product is not, when you think of
I
let's
don't want
see,
to ask the question that nobody likes to be asked.
can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Oh, our hearts broke.
I can. You're good now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, great. So again, we talked a little bit about what product thinking is. It's that intersection between the business, technology, and desirability
Mhm.
for the user. And so product thinking it's not all about the product. It's not all decisions lie with the product manager. It's not something around one person's responsible for this whole thing. And an example of that is, like, for example, in a discovery phase, design's going to play a critical role. And at development stage, your development team is going to be building that thing that design has tested with customer interviews and mock testing. And that's when development's going to start working on it. And so it's important for you to understand why we're building a thing, who's going to use it, what the persona is, and what the expected result is as a product manager or as a software engineer, so that you can build the right thing that's going to solve the problem for the customer. So given that, like, wait, why is this even important? Why does this matter? Why do we want to think like a product? Why do we want to leverage product thinking in general? And the thought behind this, the theory behind a product-driven organization, is that product thinking creates value for organizations. And how does it do this? Why does it do this? Well, being product-led helps you focus on the things that matter, right? And so how does it help you focus on the things that matter? Because you're focused on your customers. You're using customer segmentation to better understand who these users are and better understanding what their pain points are. If somebody has to log in to your site and it takes them 30 seconds to a minute for them to see that main page, that might be a bad experience for them, especially in a world after COVID where folks' attention span are less than it's ever been. And so something small as that could be a huge impact to your user experience. And for you as a developer, this is something that you can see. Another example of this is, let's say that your application goes down. Let's say that you are working on an application where the user, your customer, uses that to complete tasks, whatever those tasks may be. They could be for their business. They can be for an individual contributor role. They can be for anything. And what if your user calls you and says, hey, this isn't working? Or even worse, you find out from your CFO or CEO or CIO, or 2 weeks later, you find out after it's went through an email chain in 3 different departments, right? And so as a product manager and as a developer, you can say, what kind of proactive logging can we have, whether that's Splunk, Dynatrace, any other of these tools, that's going to let you know, hey, this thing isn't working how it's supposed to, before your customers know. And something like that, for example, is an opportunity for you to go to your product manager and have that conversation around why this is important and how it can impact the customer. And so I just want to pause right there. What questions or thoughts that you have before we finish up today's conversation?
A/B
Oh, you're
testing.
asking questions? Okay, fine.
Garrison's asking for questions. Garrison, first of all, thank you for doing this. I think this is something that we can help a lot of people with. Even though this is our first time and our PowerPoint slides didn't work, we'll get better, right? It's kind of like the product mindset, isn't it? We'll learn as we go.
You know, that's what experiments are all about. It's taking things and learning from them. The thing about success is we don't learn as much, but when we fail, we understand where we might have came up short, and we can improve on those opportunities. And it's the same thing when we think about coding, refactoring, building a product that nobody likes, or building a product that everybody loves and everybody goes to your site, and then you didn't do load or performance testing and it crashes.
That slide's not working was intentional to show you how we can do
carefully orchestrated customer journey experience.
Exactly.
Right, Scott?
By true example.
We had 5 major consulting firms give us help on that one.
And so how can you apply this product thinking to your organization?
Mhm.
And how can you start building this culture as a software developer?
Garrison, I want to go back. Sorry, I
Yeah.
do not want to be interrupted. So last, the conversation was great. Um, why I will be putting the developer in the responsible, or why you will be thinking about if something goes down. So that environment should have like a good, the process, like a operation team and the DevOps team. So things will be working in a way. If something goes down, they will be knowing immediately as part of the monitoring. And I do agree with you that there should be like some logging, good logging system, so that they can be more proactive. So I just do not want to just bring the developer in everything, because they will be doing everything the way it should be. But here is like the more operation team and the DevOps or the system engineering team will be responsible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when we think about that, it certainly depends on the how big our organization is. If this is a
Yep.
startup, or is this a top tier auto manufacturer? Is this a tech company? Is this a small company? Because that's might depend on the type of
You're
structure
right.
we have.
Yep. Yeah, please continue. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and continue today. And again, like how can you apply this to the organization that you're in today? Well, the first thing that we can do is we can be curious, right? Let our curiosity lead the way. Ask questions, right? Try to better understand what problems we're trying to solve and why those are the problems that we're solving. And the thing is with that is you go and ask somebody to try to ask them 10 questions in a row, you're going to get to 3, and by 4, they're probably going to want to punch you.
Why is that?
So, well, the reason that is because that could be different reasons. One of the reasons is you might be able to do a better job at asking more concise questions, so that you only have to ask 2 or 3 versus 8.
I'm going to stop here because 3 more, I don't want to get punched. We're a community group. We have a lot of fun. Garrison and I are
Yeah,
friends in real
I'm
life.
totally having fun. Nobody's getting punched.
And you can't
It's
punch anyways.
But Garrison, the product we will be developing as a development team, isn't most of the time coming from the business?
Ooh, wait. Everybody remember, we're in Can't Coners. The
Okay.
business.
Because it's not like the some type of, yes, many things we develop based on the ideas. But if we work in a company, we work under the business organization or the specific, like a department. So they are the primary stakeholders. They provide the kind of what they want us to do.
Yeah. And so to your point there's different types of product managers.
Yep.
Some of the elite product managers, the best in the game, work in an organization or in a structure where they drive the product. They are the business. They're the product manager,
Got
the
it.
product owner. They do both.
Okay.
And that's some of your top tier organizations. Now in other organizations, it's split between 2 people. And so it really just depends. But I think you're right. At the end of the day, a product is serving a need to a customer, and your product is a business. And so we're going to solve the needs of those users. It is interesting though, how we have this divide between north and south of the business and IT.
Wait, the business, and then IT, and then there's people like us that write product. But Garrison, what if we created a monthly meetup where we could make the developers think like the business? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the possibilities could look like if something like that happened. It's certainly something that you will want to think about.
What if we knocked down the walls and had them actually work together? I mean, get rid of this siloed mentality and build a product organization instead of throwing shit over.
Or,
sorry,
Got it.
Or know your
That's going to
limitations
cost me some
that
story
you.
points.
Oh, and it's not even costing story points. Or knowing the limitation as a developer, you work at an organization where there is a business. There's nothing ethically wrong with it. and therefore your decision rights and your influence are just limited to this sphere. And if you're happy there, you're happy there.
Yeah. And so given that, how do we start? Where do we go? Right. And so we talked about identifying problems that we want to solve, and we want to start with small scale experiments. Hey, this isn't Agile 2.0, right? It's still plan, do, check, act. We want to plan what our experiment is, have an hypothesis, do it, and then act, right? And a lot of times as a product manager, if you're doing it with a product and it's not necessarily a process, then you're going to use A/B testing or multivariant testing to see what the difference in those experiences are. And so again, it
so we
just
have a question.
yeah, sure.
The question is how much involvement of other teams are there in product thinking than developers?
Could you repeat that question?
It is in our chat. How much involvement of other team member are there in product thinking than developers? Means how much we are involving other teams, not only the developers.
Other parts of the
Yeah,
organization or
yeah,
other
absolutely. If I may, certainly. So when we're thinking about having these conversations, I'm a big fan of Teresa Torres. She talks a little bit about the product trio. She has this book out called Continuous Discovery Habits. And the product trio is having a product head in there, having an engineering and design head, because we want to be able to look at these things from different perspectives. We want to have design thinking mindset in there, user experience, as well as that engineering head and the product manager who's going to encompass both of those areas. And so to answer your question, it's going to be important that you have those three in there. And that may be different from organization. So for example, you may be in an organization where you're trying to groom or grow a junior dev, and you may say, hey, dev, here's an opportunity for you to join this conversation. And you may join them to back them up, or you may have them just go. And so when we think about that system, that's how you can start growing the folks around you. But again, to answer your question on the dot, it's going to be those three folks: product, engineering, and design. Questions on that or thoughts, Shiblu?
No, thank you. I think this is correct. And one thing I can share from my experience, we are human, we are very different and difficult sometimes. So the question is involvement. While as a new developer, if I'm in the very complex environment, I rather shut my mouth and just follow them, what they're telling me to do for a while. When I got very good hands-on my areas, what I'm doing, then slowly I can get more engagement myself, and I can actually provide my input. So it really depends about the involvement part. But I think if the moment I join in a team, in an organization, the area I will be working, I should have my best involvement, engagement beside my day-to-day work. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing your opinion. You know, this conversation is better when we're sharing our perspectives. And so again, I'm with you. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to treat our work with a beginner's mindset and incorporate learning objectives to everything you do. We have to become experiment led and breaking down those work into small chunks. And finally, we have to solve problems cross-functionally rather than being siloed, which is one of our challenges. And so just want to take a moment. We'll finish up today and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you have. But let's go to the meat of this here. I want for you to have something to walk away with today. And so here are 5 actionable insights. The first one is understand what the problem is and who you're solving it for. And what's interesting about this is it's more than what the surface level is saying. And sometimes that means peeling back the onion. We may have to ask 2 or 3 questions to really understand what the problem is. And the same thing goes who we're solving it for. And one of the things that you can see there when you're sensing things about the person you're speaking to is if you ask them who they're solving it for and it's their superior, you can immediately see that this is a hierarchical decision that is being made. So there's an opportunity for you to better understand what is the impact, who is this user, what's the real problem. Secondly, have a curiosity about how people think and behave. Humans are very, very interesting creatures. And so that curiosity to understand that, you know, you say something to somebody and why they respond the way they do, or somebody comments on your post, or you don't get the response that you're looking for. Have a fascination with human psychology to better understand how people operate, because that's going to help you be more influential and help you build stronger relationships with the folks that you work with. And so with that, that goes into demonstrating an eye for seeing good and bad user experiences. You know, as a user, when you go somewhere or try to do something and they miss the mark, right? You know what that looks like. And so what does that look like with the products that you're using? Have that spidey sense, as we call it as product managers, to really know like what could be the issue here, how could see it from a different perspective from a subset of users. And so, you know, we got 2 more points here. And the fourth one goes to Scott's point earlier. Scott, you mentioned translate features into outcomes when we're discussing product initiatives with our teams, versus saying we want this new feature out, this new payment module, this new email platform, this new this new service, these new courses, this new content, right? That's not explaining the outcome that we're looking for. What, you know, and the objective, for example, could be to improve the customer experience and help them reduce the time it takes to complete a task. Maybe it's something like that, right? But that's different than saying, hey, I'm going to build this thing. And then finally, going back to that 4th bullet point, is the 5th bullet point, which is set clear goals and metrics to measure success. If you're not setting goals and metrics, then you don't know how well you're doing. Set a baseline and a target, right? So for example, if, again, going back to the previous example that we set, if you're releasing code to production 1 time every 3 days, your goal could be release code to production every day and have that done by the end of Q2, right? And so you have numbers and metrics to support what you're aiming towards. And so with that wraps up what I have for you today. Curious to hear your thoughts before we depart for the evening, if you will.
Before we go, first of all, thank you,
Great
Garrison.
stuff.
And
So Garrison,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Scott. It's the internet lag.
Yeah. Well, toward like the metrics and such, what sort of means do you generally use to measure at any level within your product?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reason I say that's a great question is because I love metrics, not just to say that's a great question. And so when I think of metrics, I think it depends, right? So we have operational metrics. How fast is the team getting product out to customer? What is their cycle time? What is their velocity? And then but from a product standpoint, I think it depends. One of the frameworks that I like to use is the HEART framework, right? And so the HEART framework is happiness. How happy are our users? And so we might look at our North Star for that. Another one is, are we retaining customers? So actually seeing if customers are coming back to our site. Are customers converting? It really depends on the organization you're working at and what that North Star metric is. Like, for example, I've worked on a product where I could certainly higher conversion and bring more money into the organization, but that's not our main goal. Our main goal is to maybe improve the customer experience or make them happier about doing business with us. So it really depends on, because sometimes there's challenges where you want to improve a metric, but it is different than what your strategic direction is. And so if it's different than your strategic direction, the question you want to ask yourself is there something else that we can do that goes towards that strategic direction? Because the challenge is there's an opportunity cost with going with this other thing. And sometimes that other thing on a product team level can have a negative impact on other teams and what products they're releasing. And so that's one of the challenges there. And that's why it's important for you to, as a product manager, to be able to make trade-offs that go back to the bigger goal of the organization. An example of that is what Siblu mentioned earlier, is if we want to upgrade this technology now, or do we want to wait for later? Well, what is your company goal, because if you don't have the capacity to do both, then you have to decide. And usually your North Star goal is going to be the end all be all for which direction you go. Curious to hear your thoughts on that take. Did that resonate? Do you have follow-up questions, or do you see it differently?
Garrison,
No, I thought that resonated.
so simply what you're saying is every decision we make as people writing code or building code
Yep.
has to tie to a measurable outcome of our company's central goal.
Yes, sir.
When I think of good, better, best, that's probably best.
Thanks for the compliment. It's been a while.
I want to thank Coders for having me here today. It's been a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm hoping that you've taken many things away from today's session, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and Garrison,
Or in Canton Coder Slack.
yeah,
or Canton Coder Slack.
We're glad you're here. This is our first one. As you can see, we're more of like the computer club from college for everyone that's graduated and moved on to careers. And so I hope our informalities haven't scared you away. We'd love to welcome you to our community. We aren't focused on anything other than making sure people are happy. And maybe we'll adopt the HEART framework if we get that serious to track
HEART.
metrics.
You can get an NPS score